Hey Dean, welcome to the QueBIT XP&A coffee break. I'm drinking a triple Nespresso latte. Man, that's a lot to say, right? I need a little kick to get going on this integrated business planning session we're having today. Hey, what are you drinking today, Dean?
I'm not as sophisticated as you. I just got regular Joe in my cup. So
All right,
you're the sophisticated one here.
man, I tell you what, I got to have me some fancy coffee for a coffee break. So anyhow, hey, today we're talking about integrated business planning. And man, now you can define this a million different ways, but Dean's an expert in IBP, and Dean is one of the founders of the IBP Collaborative. The IBP Collaborative helps organizations understand and leverage innovative business practices and technologies that enable step change improvements in how they plan and manage their business. It's especially relevant to those that have already implemented BI systems, strategic corporate performance management or CPM systems, or S&OP, sales and operations planning processes and technology. But a interesting topic, and we've got some great solutions for this. But Dean, give me a little more background. What is IBP?
If you ask 100 people, you get 100 different answers because there's so many different definitions for it. But for me, I just look at it as if you're really trying to optimize profits, it's really just a forward-looking process for optimizing financial operational outcomes. And a key outcome is product, customer, and segment profitability and direct cash flows. So there's, like I said, there's so many different terms that you can use. This really, which is one of the things that's driving the confusion.
I'm really familiar with S&OP. I've been doing S&OP projects, started an S&OP process at the manufacturing plant where I was the CFO earlier in my career. So what's being experienced out there?
I think that, when you look at larger companies, one of the things that executives are expecting is the ability to improve their ability to manage costs and drive profitable growth. But that's actually not really happening. You can see the research studies shown on the screen there. Between the financial processes like FP&A and integrated planning, on the operational side, they're still having difficulties and they're not able to address these issues.
Yeah, I mean, and this guy on the screen here is about to fall into a hole. So, I mean, there's great promise for IBP. So what's missing?
I want to paint a picture of gloom and doom. So on the left-hand side, like if you see on the graph, it shows increasing complexity. And so for smaller companies, they're often getting the most out of IBP and integrated planning. But as you get into bigger and more complex situations, what they're not able to do is optimize profits and cash flow. And one of the reasons for that is that IBP systems don't enable real companies to really manage overhead costs. So you're only really dealing with part of the picture. And you see that on the financial side. On the right-hand side, there's an increase in what's called supply chain finance activity. So what you end up with is processes that may deliver some value, but they're really very, very costly.
So it sounds like we're missing some capabilities to actually make this happen. What's missing?
I think that, Gartner actually said it best. Last year they did on their CFO conference, one of the things that was kind of front and center was this idea of cross-functional trade-off decisions. And one of the things they mentioned was that it's something that's kind of fallen between the cracks between financial and operational planning and performance management tools. And you can see that McKinsey came across with similar conclusions. And what this really means, like, for example, like introducing new products, customers, and suppliers, one of the things that companies can't do is figure out how making any of these changes affects profits and cash flow. It doesn't exist. So being able to have a scenario planning system that actually helps you make these decisions is just, it's not available to companies. So consequently, you end up making decisions that don't have the consequences that you expected, which ends up causing what's called complexity costs, which is just the difference between what you should have done and what you actually did, expressed in terms of cash flow.
It sounds like the value is that, S&OP is kind of balancing demand and supply and a little bit of finance, mostly at a really consolidated level down to a gross margin. But what it sounds like from IBP standpoint is that we're still doing the demand and supply, but we're adding in a lot of other components, and we're getting past gross margins and net income to balance sheet and then the true effect on cash flow in almost real time as we go through these planning processes.
Exactly.
So what's needed to make that ideal situation happen?
Well, ideally, like to me, the way I look at it is that if you've got a process and you're really trying to integrate, look at the entire business, what you need is a process that's helping you dynamically optimize costs, profits, and value. The problem is that neither financial nor operational solutions are actually doing that. What you really want them to do is have a system where you're having what I call self-adjusting cost structure. So you should never have to do special cost reduction studies. So what you really need is a process or a tool that's combining rolling forecasts with integrated business planning to have one process that's accomplishing these things. That's what's really missing in the marketplace.
I mean, what's the solution here? I mean, we talked a little bit about S&OP. XP&A holds a promise of actually all this connected planning. But where I see the hole here is that S&OP kind of stops at that gross margin level. So it misses out on the financial statements and all the rest of the line items here. Scenario planning, down through cash flow, product and customer profitability, you never get to in an S&OP process, or you might be doing that offline. XP&A has the promise of connecting all these different processes, but typically they're disconnected at some point, and then you have to kind of manually connect them, and you don't get a true sense of, hey, if I add a new customer and I drop a price, what does that do to cash flow? Does it cross my cash flow covenants with my line of credit? I mean, that's really important decision making that can happen in real time in this last column. So tell me a little bit more about this last column.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to introduce brand new terminologies, but what this is really just representing what I call manufacturing specific XP&A tools, which are XP&A tools that are specifically made for manufacturers. So the things that they have that others do not are the things that you see listed on the right column. But a couple of things that are kind of at the heart of this are kind of like having your basic manufacturing logic, like bills and routings embedded in the tool, which then in turn drive the ability to do things like cash flow forecasting. But one of the classic telltales of something that really does this well is the ability to have standard costing and automated variance analysis embedded in it to automate a lot of these supply chain finance activities, which are currently being done manually. To me, these are the things that are really kind of separating, XP&A vendors that are kind of general purpose versus ones that are manufacturing specific. And Pigment is one company that I've seen that's actually has the capability to do these things.
Yeah, we actually are a Pigment partner, and we've developed a great asset that is implementable on the Pigment platform. And we have a webinar that we did recently, and I'll leave a link to that in the post when we post this video. So, hey, Dean, this has been fantastic. Thank you for the overview of IBP. We've got some solutions out there that are revolutionary in the marketplace, it sounds like. We have your expertise to help customers get started with these things. You can find Dean at the ibpcollaborative.org. The link's right here on the screen. You can contact me at dbarrett@QueBIT or Dean Sorensen at his email address here, or through LinkedIn Messenger. And by the way, if you find this topic interesting and would like to schedule a one-on-one 15-minute coffee break focused on your businesses and the challenges you face, contact me. We'll set up a session, and we'll send you a $30 Starbucks gift card for your time. So, Dean, thank you again for your time today.
Thanks for having me.